Good evening. Today is Thursday, July 10th, 6:34. This is our regularly scheduled planning commission meeting. First, I guess we call to order and have a roll call.
Lee, is your computer speaker and microphone off? Not that one, your computer,
You can mute.
because that's where the echo is likely coming from, unless it was Dawn that just took care of it.
It might have been mine, even though I thought I had everything off.
So Larry Larson,
Here.
Don DeZellum,
Present.
Ken Hartsfield is absent, Don Huang,
Here.
Ken Kennedy,
I am present on Zoom.
Jared Newcomb is absent, and Chair Brown is here.
Here.
Also in attendance, excuse me, is myself, Karen Schmink, our consultant, Jen Gardner's online, and our fabulous planner too is in the back running our audio visual tonight.
Pledge.
One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay.
Next item is our work session, which will turn over to Karen and or Jen.
Hang on, I'm trying to figure out which screen I need to share. She sent it as a PDF. Okay. All right, so where are we? Oops, this is gonna be very weird. I'm using a little different software. Jen sent me the PowerPoint in a PDF because we weren't sure how well OneDrive plays. So it's a little bit different for me to like flip slides and stuff from what I can tell. So tonight's work session, we're talking specifically, we've got one item in particular to talk about, but I want to talk just more globally about some of what we saw in y'all's review of our clean draft of the updated, consolidated, unified land development code. So just to remind everybody, our purpose of this project was to restructure these current regulations. We were taking 3 different chapters and integrating them into one unified code that now consists of 6 individual chapters or 7 individual chapters, where those chapters will complement each other and work in combination with one another. So we were largely cleaning up and clarifying the administration of all these regulations because we had process all over the place. One of my jokes was that it was like flecks of pepper in the macaroni and cheese in terms of like where we would find things.
David, can you just maybe turn it down a little bit? Maybe that's part of it.
Turn what down a little?
Just the room volume.
Okay.
I think that's better. Thanks.
Okay, sure. And we were also, as we were working through all that, we were finding different sections of things that conflicted with one another. So trying to get clarity around those. So that was some of the cleanup work we were doing. When necessary, we were doing some historical research, going back through what was the original intent, when were things adopted, what changed when over time. Because there were instances where that was relevant to unwind something in terms of what were we really trying to accomplish. And you know, just revisions over time eroded some of the language or intent. Because when you think about how long the city of Woodland Park has had zoning, I think the original ordinance was like 66 or 69. And if you think about the number of planning staff, planning directors, city managers, city attorneys that have all had their fingers in this or working on different projects or issues as they've come up over the years. So that's a lot of people salting the same pot of stew for what, 60 years almost. So Woodland Park was long overdue for this type of holistic restructuring and looking at things. So as we go forward, you know, since you guys have done all this work, when you look at the next version, you know, after legal review, and what goes out to the public, you guys, Jen and I talked about this, you're gonna get your own separate Kaweah links for you guys to then do any other final rounds of comments or concerns while the general public's doing theirs. But you will see that not everything that you guys brought up through this was incorporated. Some things are, not everything is, and stuff that is not, I assure you, there is a very solid reason behind it. One of the things, Lee, you had flagged in the intent of 2 of the multifamily zone districts, there was a phrase in there. I can tell you what it is. If I did.
Accommodates.
Intended
It
to
accommodates
accommodate.
attached dwellings.
Yeah, intended to accommodate was the phrase that you flagged. From doing other research today, that was actually very clearly part of the ordinance that was adopted in 2020 related to cleaning things up after the tiny home project.
It was the same language that had been in prior to 2020.
And I
It was
said,
there was no action taken on it. And that language was part of what allowed the controversial decision to have a tiny home project, because it didn't require attached, it just said accommodated attached. Now, I understand there's a separate mechanism put on which is not desirable to the city planning community, but it would be less necessary to have the conditional use if in fact the provisions of what the zone was for said what we mean, which is attached.
yeah, no, and that's like a whole other problem with our.
Oh, and so did I put some caps in that, my comment? I think that's important it's an important.
But
It's an important.
my point is, we got there honestly, and that was looked at like 5 years ago, and everybody said, we want that language in there.
No, it was simply a carryover from the pre-2020. It was never changed. It was not discussed. It was.
Okay, point taken. So anyhow, I just wanted to use that as an example of some of the research and looking at things that had come up or where it came up. And I actually stumbled into that one because I was looking at something else. But I just thought that was kind of interesting. So like I said, things that you guys have suggested may not be modified or adjusted. Other things will. And some of it was comments from folks that had missed different work sessions or only participated in some of them. I mean, I could tell, you know, when things were, or kind of where some of those gaps were, or comments were made, not understanding that, oh, that part's over in this section. And like I said, that's how these chapters kind of work together. So some of that's learning to navigate the regulations, because, you know, there's not a one size fits all perfect way to write regulations. It's really, what is the methodology of that particular code document, and is it consistent within that document? So there were things that you guys flagged where we have current inconsistencies. So some stuff's potentially going to move around a little bit to improve that.
So like when we do go line by line, is it recorded, like accepted, rejected, or but rejected for this reason, or are we getting that feedback is my real question?
I had not planned on that. I mean, we do have the comments in a spreadsheet. The whole point is to keep this moving forward at this point.
Well, I understand, but speaking for myself and probably for the rest, we will put our heels in if we feel, if it feels like it is important and it got ignored or you know,
Right, which
checked
is-
out of that.
How about sharing the spreadsheet with us with the comments people made where it's noted what Jen said, accepted, not accepted, or Jen wrote in how it's going to be changed.
Yeah. That would be good.
Jen and I can look at that. We can figure out how to get you that. yeah, let me talk to her about where we're going with that. So a lot of them really were capitalization kind of things. Lee, I especially enjoyed some of the typos that you flagged that are in our current regulations.
Principal, it's
Exactly.
AL when it means the main thing.
Yeah, as opposed to like the principal of the high school or, or, you know, yeah. Oh, I can't think of how to explain it. There was one that Jen and I had caught, I think, before I even went out the door, but talked about residential liability, when it really, the word should have been livability.
There's a big difference.
Yeah, yeah, the letter V had gotten dropped from the word. So, yeah, it's been kind of fun to clean up some of those.
Yeah, so if you have 230 comments and you accept 194 of them. I don't think we need to review that as a group, I would say.
You know, and we're not going to, no,
Yeah.
that was not the point of this.
Right, okay.
Yeah,
But the
we
point
already
is to
did line by line.
Whittle it down to the ones that do need to be.
Yeah.
thought
That
of.
may not be the point of today's meeting, but then,
Yeah.
because you had a different intent, so
Yeah.
you can do it otherwise.
Well, and the other part of that is, like I said, the where it's located may shift around in the overall document, but we're not looking at changing the content of it, you know, or the metrics behind it. It's like, does this belong in this location or versus this location? So some of you had great suggestions in terms of this would be better suited over here. So like I said, you'll see that stuff shift around, but I think it's much more logical in this next round of things. So,
And Lee and Don and Ken, keep in mind that when we have a draft before us to say, this is what we'd like to present to the public, do you agree? We could say yes, no, maybe. And we don't have to say
Well, actually, we don't get to say maybe, we get to say yes or no.
yes or no, yes or no, but we have that opportunity to say, I'm not comfortable taking this to the public at this time for a public hearing. We need a little bit more work. So keep that in mind that everything that comes down, and I know Karen's under a lot of pressure to keep this thing moving forward at an amazing rate of speed, but we do have that opportunity.
I would agree with 200-something comments. The chances of those all being incorporated in a manner satisfactory to the commission in one run through are between slim and none, I would think. Especially, we expect, among the things too, all the yellow highlighted cross references I ignored because many of them are wrong and they're highlighted as yellow. I pointed out a few of the cross references that weren't highlighted that were wrong, but I can't say I got them all.
No.
There's too many to be done, but it's just, there's enough of this stuff that to send it out again without another review it may generate some embarrassment.
I mean, like in my comments, there were two that I said, this is the biggie and this is the other biggie. And then I also made some recommendations on cleaning up the review procedures table. I figured that's probably worth going through. So for me, I really only had 3 things that I think really need to be aired. So, but I don't know if y'all have such a short list.
well, and that's where things were not necessarily flagged by the group, where it's a conversation with some of you guys individually about what is this, how does it work, where is it going? So that's part of where this is, to get it moving is, yeah, things that weren't flagged by but it should, okay, at this point, there's a part of me that likes to beg you, it's like, trust me. You know, because we've been working on this for so long, and I would hope that based on what you saw in this document, you're on a scale of 1 to 10, your level of trust in terms of what we delivered is, I would like to think, is at least a 7 at this point. You know, and based on the comments we got back, I would like to think that's where that is, if not higher. I'm a hard grader. And yes, there's things that need refinement, But you guys who have prepared large, big documents before know that it takes a while to get that through there.
I mean,
And so let me kind of keep this moving. So, so the current goal right now really is further refinement before legal review. And you guys have been instrumental in getting that done here. So I do want to compliment you guys. Excellent work. I really appreciate everything that you guys put in there for comments. It was very, very helpful. Your attention to detail is greatly appreciated, because it helps us snag all those things. And so, when Jen and I sent this out the door, because we recognize we're on a timeline, partly because of folks' vacation schedules, when they're available for different work sessions and stuff, we knew there were things in this document that needed more attention, but we didn't have the time to give it the spit shine we would have liked to before it went to you all. So yes, there was stuff you were going to find. We recognize, and this is one that you guys all kind of flagged, or a number of you flagged in terms of outdoor storage, how it's addressed, where it's located. We know that needs to be tightened up. So, but we're not changing the metrics behind it. It's more about where you look for that. How does it interplay, especially a lot of times since it's accessory to a different use. So we recognize that was one thing. One thing that I personally want to do a double check on was that condo and townhome plats relative to the conditional use permit process. Because anytime you're doing attached housing, you're needing to do that conditional use permit given how our use table is structured. So that's a double check I want to make sure is working well. Things that we know need to be cleaned up a little bit is how we refer to days. Because of the different times when different parts of the ordinance were all adopted. There's calendar days, there's working days, there's business days. We caught a lot of that, but going back through and looking at from that unified perspective to build in that consistency, we know that needs clarity. The manufactured home terminology, trying to move away from mobile home. So yeah, we would say it was one of those things where we didn't have that, because I got this out pretty late on a Friday. It would have been middle of the following week otherwise, to do those additional sweeps through for search and replace on some of this stuff. So yeah, cleaning up that terminology. We know that the residential zone district labels, especially around the two multifamily zones and the manufactured home community zone, currently mobile home park, needs some cleanup and some tightening, and to make sure those labels are clear and distinct, and not confused with a different term as a use or something. So we know that that's out there. And then there's thanks to the state legislature, the whole move away from the term family towards household. So we know that needs to be run through again and caught. So that was definitely on our list. So you guys passed. You hit a lot of the stuff that we knew. So thank you. And then a number of other things that we didn't catch, and that's where you guys were instrumental, and we're very, very grateful for all of your time and work and whatever else you put into this over the course of this next week. I really, really, truly appreciate it, and we will look at absolutely every single thing that you guys load up there. And so with that, like I said, we knew the biggie for me anyhow was this whole confusion that I was seeing around open space versus lot coverage. That we needed, that's the substantive thing that I need to make sure that we get kind of cleaned up here. And I think I've got some answers and well, some history. So right now in our new and improved proposed regulations, chapter 5 is subdivision or related to subdivision standards. And it's in that particular chapter where we talk about the parkland dedication requirements or payment of a fee in lieu of parkland dedication, and then open space, which is kind of stuff that's not suitable for building, but we didn't want for a park, but we don't want it developed. So, so that particular chapter, I think, is in pretty good shape. That was one of the places where we did a lot of historical research around the parklands, the different park fees, that kind of thing. It's when you got into like what's now in chapter 3, the section where it starts to talk about site density and open space requirements, that there's this term again, open space, and it's like, and then currently is part of the subdivision stuff, but we've put it in chapter 2, we think it's going to move again, is this lot coverage ratio or lot coverage standards that applies to single family residential lots in the UR and SR zones. So that was, I said previously in the subdivision regs, and it's like, just trying to make sure we understand what applies when and how. So this is where I get to tell you a story. Kind of a long story. Because in terms of unraveling this section of site density and open space requirements that's currently in this 18.33.180. The language says open space areas shall be provided and maintained as a percentage of the lot equal to or greater than the following. And so it's not exactly clear are those zone districts, are those uses, what was going on, what was the intent? So when you go back to the original ordinance from 1998, when that was added and developed, it doesn't give you a whole lot more insight other than it really was part of implementing the master plan from 1996. And looking to maintain our more or not dense, I can't think of the word, very open, more rural kind of look and feel to Woodland Park, because that whole section 180 was adopted at the same time, and that's where you see landscaping and lighting. The architectural design standards showed up for the first time, all in the same ordinance adoption.
Yeah, and then there's one other where we.
But I'm gonna get to that. Yeah, no, this is the story.
Awesome.
So thanks for your patience. And they did that whole section development of that through a special committee that looked and evaluated that and put together that particular ordinance that was then adopted in the form that you see now. In 2000, in 2000, there was another ordinance that at that point in time, part of what was going on, and it's interesting looking at older use tables, is historically, you could do single family homes as a permitted use in those multifamily zones, and also, and it was a conditional use in some of the commercial zones. It required a conditional use permit. And so part of what you were seeing, since that single family home was a permitted use in those multifamily zones, is subdivision requests and development of single family homes in those multifamily zone districts, as a use by right. So you're ending up with considerably more density, because you've got a pretty tight density, like whether it's 8 units per acre or even up to 20 units per acre, depending upon which of those zone districts. So it was in 2000 where this was added, where it literally in the use table says single family requiring subdivision. That is a use in the use table. And at that same time, added in this requirement to that A, B, C, and D, where E was added. So that anytime somebody was doing single family that required a subdivision or replat, they were required to be providing 40% open space on a lot. I said it was an interesting way to try and solve a problem.
There was one other one buried in one of the other chapters, like another 40% or for a different.
Oh, that's for clustered developments, which we were treating like a use type. So that didn't show up here because that's really part of the overall subdivision and layout is where that 40% gets established and clarified. And so that's one of the things I know you flagged on. And so it's partly buried under the parkland dedication, I believe. It's part of the subdivision standards. but it, I believe, also appears within chapter 4 for the use specific standards for cluster development. So one pertains to the other land dedication, so we appreciate that to make sure that that gets clarified and that's where it needs to be. It just may still need to be in 2 places. I said I didn't get a chance to look at it in that level of detail. So then in 2001, that's when the land use intensity ratios table appeared in the subdivision standards. And that land use intensity ratio really is a lot coverage standard. It's got a odd name. It's in subdivision because it was associated with single family lots resulting from new subdivision or replats within the SR and UR zones. But when you're administering the rules and you're looking at just the zoning chapter and somebody's proposing a single family home, it's like, why would you go back there and look at that? It's one of those awkward disconnects in terms of navigating our current regulations. So I said, this is one of those things that may very well get moved in our proposed draft. And then that term, that single family requiring a subdivision in that use table in 2020, when you guys did that fix around the tiny homes in the, or single or individual, let me get this right, detached dwellings in the multifamily zone districts. When you guys did that fix around that, this particular term was deleted from the use table. You know, so single family requiring a subdivision no longer shows up as a use. But at that same time, this other metric, that 40% requirement, stayed in that other section. So it was not seen or tied to that or viewed that same way. So that's kind of an interesting little disconnect. So one of the other things, actually, I want to change the screen I'm sharing. Because the calculator, that table, the lot land use intensity ratio table, that shows up in 17 right now that we moved to chapter 2 related to those zones. Our prior engineer had formulated that into a table, so it's much easier to actually use. Let me see if I can make this bigger. Okay. So this is fun, and this does work. I did the math longhand to check. So in our zone, let's see, I think the smallest lot size at this point that we would permit is 7,500 square feet. So if I put that into the lot size, it will tell me that the maximum percentage of the lot that you can cover is 35%. And so that's the square footage of what can be covered as part of building a home on a 7,500 square foot lot. So by contrast, and so 35%, remember that number for, you know, that small lot. So by contrast, if we put in an acre, you are actually only allowed to cover 20% of an acre. So the bigger the lot, the smaller the percentage of the land area. So it helps maintain that larger, more open feel. So that's what this does, and it's showing you the most that you can cover, which is the inverse of,
Aaron?
yes.
It can. Is that the same in urban residential as suburban residential? Those
Yes.
ratios?
Yes, 'cause it's based on lot size.
Okay, I thought it was different ratio too, and not just the lot size, but, okay, thank you.
Yeah, no, the formula is a little different depending upon lot size, and like I said, the prior engineer built all that in behind this. So from the end user standpoint, you just put in your lot size or your structure size. And that'll tell you whether or
I
not.
thought
you-
it was, I thought it was different coverage ratios based on whether it's urban residential or suburban residential, and not just the size of the lot. I thought there was also a coverage difference too, but maybe I'm remembering it wrong.
Yeah, no, it applies equally to both of those zone districts. So I said,
Okay.
this talks about the most that you can cover versus that other metric in, the related to the use type talks about the amount you have to remain open. You know, so one's talking about coverage, the other one's talking about open area. So that's part of where your head starts to explode. Let's see. So in terms of cleaning up what's in chapter 3 now related to those percentages, you know, rather than it being open space requirements, that's where it really probably should be relabeled as lot coverage limitations. And I will email you in just a second. You could take one and pass her along, please. Okay, Ken, I just sent you an email. That has this handout. So that whole, what's now in section 3.10.01, this, at this point, I don't think needs a lot of changes. That would then increase clarity. It's referring to this as open space at this lot level, as opposed to open space as part of that's dedicated as part of a subdivision. And so since this applies to individual lot development, without doing a whole lot of gymnastics at this point, relabel this section as lot coverage limitations and delete that word space that shows up at the beginning of A, B, and C, those subsections. So you're talking about open areas on the lots. And then the other suggestion.
Is open areas a defined term?
Right now it's not, but if we could get a definition.
Is it intended to have the same open space as was in 17.40.25 and it's now in your 2.05.02 draft? In other words,
That's-
where the principal building and accessory buildings is, but nothing else? Or is
Okay,
it something else?
So that table pertains to single SR and
You are.
UR zone districts. So this stuff pertains to the other types of development from what I can tell. And this is where, this is, in my opinion, this is something that needs way further refinement through a subsequent ordinance change to clarify and get these things probably more consistent between all of that. But at this point, for minimal editing and keeping things, and just get rid of the obvious point of confusion, this is like the minimum level of suggestions that I'm making. Because to go beyond this, I think really gets into much more substantive process and way more research and evaluation to look at all these things. And so like I said, I was recommending we just get rid of the word space, so we're talking about the open area or non-buildable area on a lot. And then since that use, that single family residential dwelling requiring a subdivision or replat is no longer a use in that table, to get rid of that particular line item.
Does the lot coverage standard for single, for SR and UR, is it getting moved someplace? Is it continuing, but just being moved? Where is it?
It's continuing. Right now, it's at the beginning of chapter 2.
It's in 2.05.02. The
Right,
impression is it's moving. Where is it moving?
likely to chapter 3 in this similar area.
In the sheet, but you didn't write it down?
I did not, because I see it as a different section, because when Jen and I we didn't get a chance to brainstorm this further, because it's taken me days to unravel this story, okay? You know, like everything else, I could have used another week. So we talked about trying to incorporate it in the same thing, but that's when we figured out one's talking about open area, the other one's talking about coverage. So they really still need to remain separate. So you talk about lot coverage standards for the SR and the UR zone, and then you've got these limitations in these other types of development.
So is open space still its own separate
It's its
thing,
own thing that happens at
And
subdivision as.
like
part
for
of
PUDs
that.
and things like that?
Yes,
Okay.
PUD or a clustered development.
So-
Yeah, no, I mean, this approach makes sense to me. Only thing that strikes me a little odd is we title it lot coverage limitations, and then we never talk about lot coverage limitations. We only talk about open areas, which is just, I think you're saying it's just the inverse. But so either maybe just stick with open areas, that would be the simplest edit. Or you'd probably want to flip the narrative, so we stop talking about open areas and talk about lot coverage limitations. But the simplest thing would be just, yeah, refer to open areas as distinct from open spaces.
And you know, there's a definition under open space. You look under our definitions,
Right.
and you look under open space. Trying to get there.
Yeah, no, I got it right here, and the one important, seemingly subtle, one important difference says, open space is for use and enjoyment of owners, occupants, and their guests, and land adjoining of or neighboring open space. So, open space is a little more expansive,
Open space is space that
Concept.
people can use for recreating.
right?
Right.
A little more expansive concept than just an open area, a undeveloped.
Well, as I said,
I think by starting this new term, open areas, you're gonna confuse people, because it sounds like open space, but it's not the same thing at all.
Could you use? the
Instead, you
definition?
wanna come up with something like,
non-buildable area,
yeah, unbuilt on area, or
non-buildable area.
not buildable, unbuilt on, or something, or not.
Yeah, non-buildable makes it sound like you can't build on it.
Well, that's
Well,
the
you
point,
can't-
because
well,
it's supposed
yeah,
to be open.
But I mean.
You can't, but
Like it's a rock built
it's not, there's no particular area that's non-buildable, it's just the collective amount has to meet within a limit, so it's not a particular spot.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that,
If you try and if you try and get a variation on open space, it sounds like this other kind of thing.
So, it's not a ton more work, I think the stronger option is to finish what you started and actually make this a lot coverage limit section. Just need to invert the text, so we're actually talking about lot coverage limitations, not talking about the inverse, which is open area. And I mean, it's 20-30 minutes of work just to flip the.
okay,
script.
Yeah.
No, I agree, it's lot coverage, not open area.
Cause that's, to Karen's point, I mean, that's really what we're regulating here, is how much you can cover.
So are we okay with the words lot coverage limitations?
or just lot coverage standards.
Okay,
So
Yeah.
then, can I jump in for a second? Are you, just to clarify? Are you basically saying change it to lot coverage requirements and then invert all the numbers too? So it would be
Yes,
60% of the lot? Okay, perfect.
yeah, so you would say covered areas or something, or
Right. 60%
Not exceed,
maximum. Yeah, perfect.
covered areas include, covered areas do not include.
Yeah, like I said, Jen and I could have used another hour or two on this, but we
Yeah.
didn't get it.
No, but I like the way you pull it together and clarified the distinction between open space and a lot coverage, and that's a very
Yeah.
important.
Yep.
That one, I bet once you did it in your head, it all started to go, that's why we're confusing ourselves, because they're two different things.
We know why we're confused, it's because it's conflicting and it's,
Yeah.
what are you talking about? And, yeah, it's, and to your, I think Dawn, it was you who flagged some of this, because you really looked at this, maybe it was Larry also. What the limitations around, the SR and the UR zone, what counts as, a part of what can be included for what can be coverage, or how, where you draw the line is different between these two
It's
things.
slightly different.
And I understand why, when you think about residential zones, whether or not you're including decks and driveways and such, versus in a more commercial development or a multifamily project, you're looking at sidewalks that potentially connect buildings. You know, because it also makes reference to like a roof garden, you know, in a building which is pretty far out there for, what was it, 1998 or for Woodland Park. You know, so it was just, the lines are a little different between those. But to you guys' point, change the percentage and the terminology around that. You know, I think that gets better consistency for where we are at the moment. I do think it needs a deeper dive in the future and further refinement, but for now, I think that would take care of what
I
we
think
do.
an excellent revision.
So,
Do you think you're looking at the individual lot at the time of zoning development permit?
yes,
Okay, well, then we should probably clarify that, because you could interpret that to mean at the time we're reviewing a multifamily project or a commercial project, this would apply. So I think you need to just clarify, this is for lots.
well, and that's part of where this is also challenging, because when somebody's coming through that conditional use permit process, they're showing you a site plan for a townhouse project or whatever it may be, that you're gonna wanna look at this and go, how much of that site is being covered? You know, so it does apply, you know, at that point for laying some of that out, in my opinion. But we can get some clarity in there. But yeah, I do think it's at the lot level. It's applied to the lot.
That's important.
Yep.
Do you want to like vote thumbs up, or how do you want
Well, nobody gave me a dissenting comment, so I'm taking that as endorsement for where we need to go.
to? Clarification is very important, but I'm way thumbs up.
Good with it.
Me too.
Ken,
This question?
any other thoughts on this? I just want to make sure we didn't leave you out.
No, I'm listening and I'm fine.
Okay. Lee. Reasonably comfortable?
I'm not.
Are
Either
you,
comfortable nor uncomfortable.
well, which one is it? Are you uncomfortable or comfortable?
In between.
Okay. So I will happily accept that. Just, I appreciate you.
I'll see, I'll see how it comes out.
Yeah. Yeah, no.
Let me ask a question. Let me ask a question that might help with this. This document, the moment we release it, we'll probably have to start working on some revision, I would think. The state will require something, and family will come back instead of household, you know, whatever. But it's not, this document is never going to be set in stone for a multi-year period. It's always going to have to be updated and revised as we go, correct?
Yes. Yes, in fact, it's
So
had changes over the years.
So to me, no matter where we settle, on releasing it, it's gonna be subject to change anyway, at some point in the near future.
But the burden of change gets much, much higher because once it's formally adopted, then it would take an ordinance to change it.
Well, it's gonna take an ordinance to get it put in place.
Well, I know, right
mean,
now, but
It takes an ordinance to do anything, so.
rubber,
Yeah,
and then it's gonna get
Yeah.
turned into cement when it goes to city council and gets approved.
So
so I'm glad you
The
brought that
issue
up.
is- the issue is that we're gonna launch this. And it's gonna probably have some amount of revision that's just gonna come that, you know, as good as we are, we can't catch everything. And there'll be a moment of revision to correct something. And then there'll be the next state issued change that drives change in our ordinance, et cetera, et cetera. So I guess the question I would ask is, how far do we need to get this before you're comfortable enough, like Karen was saying, to release it for review, get additional comment, additional eyes on it, the city council looking at it, and take all that in, that process, and then release it?
Well, we've got our next steps pretty well charted in terms of, incorporating as appropriate the comments from y'all's review this time around. Then it goes off to legal counsel for a legal review to make sure there's not something in there that's a big game
Yeah.
changer from that legal perspective. And then it's from there that we start that community outreach, because while all these work sessions have been public, early on when we were grinding through comma by comma, we had some folks that attended, but then they kind of dropped off. So I think there's interest out there, but to watch the group grind comma by comma, that they didn't have that level of interest. So I do think, we'll get some feedback and we'll evaluate what comes through the door. Ken, to your point about things changing in the future, one of the great moments of the past several days when I was doing my research was where we started in 1998 with adopting this standard. I think it's either planning commission or city council minutes for the meeting related to the hearing on this particular ordinance. It is documented in the minutes that this is by no means a perfect document and it will be amended. So it's since 98, it's taken us a while to get to the amendment. And that was just for that section that we were talking about with the open space that's not open space, it's, lot area. But I just thought that was quite kind of fun, and it just emphasizes the point that zoning ordinances are dynamic over time, partly because of community needs changing. And we've seen that when you do the research, a lot of the smaller changes that happened over time were in response to other plan amendments. It's like, oh, we need to address this, we need to address housing, we need to look at the character of the community and visually what it looks like. So that was a lot of what happened in 98 as to why we.
My experience with large documents with lots of requirements and other things is the sooner you get it to the broader audience, the sooner you get to the closer to the finished document. The small effort, smaller groups grinding on it will never get it there. You really need to get it into play and see how it actually functions to finish it.
Ken, to your point, and really to Larry's kind of, what's the threshold? Like I said, I really only have three things that I really want to hear, discuss, and or hear how they're resolved or not resolved, but understand that. So like I said, my list is pretty short. I mean, I would, if told I had
spending time with you, Don, I promise.
Well, no, but I think there's only three, and I think they're the kind of things that need the whole
I'd like to
commission.
meet with you first, because it's stuff that the rest of the group did not chime in on. From a planner perspective, I trust me, please just let me meet with you.
Okay.
Please.
Well, but like I said, my list is short. I only have three things that if I need to have that either explained to me or so I understand why it's this way or not the other way.
Yep.
But so my list is short. Hopefully y'all have reasonably comparable short list, and then I think we can get to that point that Ken described
Yeah.
reasonably quickly.
You know, we're on the verge. So like I said, we've got your comments for how to amend this section 3.10.01. Like I said, we're likely relocating those other lot coverage standards from 2 to 3, and I think they'll jive more cleanly with this section at this point. And then, like we said, we're not making changes to parkland or open space dedication in chapter 5. That one, nobody commented on. We're pretty comfortable. So I think that's in good shape.
Karen, keep in mind that in your memo to us on June 27th,
Uh-huh.
you kind of give us a rundown on where we're going to go and give us some deadlines. And when I looked at my review, I looked at what I thought were substantial things that need to be addressed by the 7th of July. And I also thought that we'd have an opportunity to give you all our comments by the 21st of July.
Uh-huh.
Minor little things,
Uh-huh.
little typos and so on and so forth.
Yeah, no, I'm still-
We're still holding to that,
Yes.
because I don't intend to spend a whole lot more time than I did before reviewing the clean draft, because I spent a lot of time.
You know, it shows. And yeah, no, because I think Jen, we were what, 239-ish comments? Yeah,
Just wanted to be on the same page.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I'm holding true to my timeline, what we promised y'all.
Okay.
So. And so, you know, we've been pretty clear as we ground along for the past 2.5 years that there were different things that we identified along the way. There were things we weren't touching whatsoever. One of it's a vocabulary clarity thing, because we've got sexually oriented businesses, adult businesses, you know, that's a little all over the place. So that's where Jen and I talked, it's like, I think nowadays the appropriate term is adult oriented businesses, to just clean that up. It doesn't change any of the definitions. It just fixes the label to the contemporary, what is it called? So that's an example of what you'll see us do. But it doesn't impact what's going on, the intent, the zoning district where it's allowed, any of that kind of thing. So, but that's an example of some of the cleanup based on feedback we've gotten. But when we were looking through this, I said, those adult businesses were a don't touch, marijuana businesses were a don't touch, you know, there was a number of
Signs.
things.
Yeah.
Sign regs, yep, no. Yeah, some of it's restructuring in terms of where stuff is found. You know, so definitions are now with definitions. One of you guys commented about in the sign regs, there is process in there, so it probably does need to be pulled out and put in the appropriate section, but we're not changing content. It's where this stuff is so that we're consistent with the intent of how these chapters all function and work together. So that's the big goal, is the structural, getting this to work. Because when we have a good structure for this document, it makes these other amendments and revisions easier to plug in a very clean way, so that the integrity of the code doesn't fall apart, but you get the metrics and what you're after. So things that I think need to be looked at going forward, kind of relates to housing in general, because I mean, even in this current comp plan, it talks about housing options and variety and what do we want, and I don't know that our use table really gets us where we want, or what are the standards associated with developing housing types. So that's a much broader conversation, that potentially is a very worthwhile project for Woodland Park to get that looked at.
That would be after.
After,
Oh,
oh yeah, no,
okay.
see, future, I should have highlighted that, future.
Yeah, cause you were just saying, let's kind of stick with the.
No, I'm trying to
Let's
take the vision of, we've got to get the structure. in
Panic here
place,
for just about
'cause
30
we've
seconds.
we got real meat, we gotta
Yeah.
put on the bone.
Do the 2030 comprehensive plan update first before you go into that next step.
Yeah, I was just gonna
Yeah.
say,
Well, there's other smaller things though that were part of what we looked at. You know, we may need to further clarify those lot coverage limitations. It was brought up, we got definitely some folks in the community that are interested in a much broader dark sky ordinance related to lighting. But that was not part of what we're doing. our parking metrics really do need some work. Jen and her team had started to dive into that, and then we pulled the brakes on that, and it's like, no, because we committed, that's not where we're doing, that's not what this was part of, and that's a different conversation, probably with other outreach and studies or data to back up what would be proposed. So in that parking table, and this is one of the other more detailed scrubs we still need to reconcile, is making sure those categories align very broadly, with the parking standard. And there were a couple that we needed to add, and we looked at what's close to that in our current metrics and plug something in, just so that we at least have something to tell folks. Because right now there's occasions when it's very challenging to apply. I think maybe we need to be looking at our landscaping requirements at some point. That mobile home chapter really could use a cleanup, but since we don't get.
Yeah, I didn't touch that one, cause it was like, so this is mostly straight out of the law and we don't have any, so.
Well, and it's very old language and,
We're an hour in, we haven't really had a meaty discussion, so I'm getting a little kind of chomping at the bit, are we gonna?
well, let me finish my slide.
Okay.
And then the last one, this is actually kind of a big deal, is our engineering specs. There's a lot of stuff in there that we do need to make sure it reconciles with some of our subdivision stuff a little cleaner, a little tighter. That's actually where flow charts exist with regard to what does our process look like. So I think there's some work there that needs to happen. So these are, you said, where the meat on the bone happens. And that's what I had for things here. For what and like I said, I got what I needed from you guys related to that lot coverage conversation. And Jen and I, when we were looking at this, we weren't coming up with anything that was that real substantive, like what is the standard, what is the metric. Nobody's come back and said, chapter 6 is a nightmare. You guys are going all the wrong direction. It's little things in terms of, is this in the right spot? Not a lot of that. Because when you look at those comments, Jen, what was the percentage? There was, how many were questions? How many were, like typo or what, but, I can't think of the right word.
Yeah, I can get you the exact number here. Just give me 1 second.
So this may help you feel better when you hear these metrics around what was more location related versus fix this capitalization kind of comments.
It's not giving me the percentage. Oh, it is. 13% were questions. 16% were comments. Only 2% were technical edits. And the others, they're categorized as suggested revisions, but I would say a lot of those were actually questions as well. So, or just kind of clarification. Hey, this reads kind of funny. How can we clarify it? So, yeah, so there were only, Karen and I've combed over this spreadsheet twice, well, 2 or 3 times, twice together this week. And we kept reading through all the comments going, yeah, that seems straightforward. We can address that. And really, we're not coming up, like she said, with anything that was like, wow, we really need to discuss this as a group. So,
one example was we have a broader category of zone districts right now called open space zone districts. The only thing in there was ag zone. It was suggested just move it to the miscellaneous district and eliminate that category. That's one example of just moving something because the current categorization really doesn't add anything. So that's an example of,
I'm not sure where you came out. One of the comments I made is it made no sense to have every grouping of zone districts, first residential and then commercial industrial and then open and then miscellaneous, and start with the same set of general provisions, half a page listing. So these apply to this group of zones. Then you do 10 pages later, it applies to this group of zones. There's no reason to group the zones at all. And once saying general provisions ought to be sufficient, not saying general provisions for each one. And
so at the end of the day, assuming we accept everything that Lee just said, the content is still there. The reference to get to the other subcategories is still there. The metrics behind those sub criteria and stuff don't get changed. So it's really, is this a cleaner way to find what you need to find? So that's what we consider like more organizational, you know, than something that, you know, really, does the whole group need to now look at this? And it's, the bottom line is, can you find what you're looking for? So, so there were, you know, a number of comments like that in there. And like I said, is this in the right spot? Is it not?
Yeah, and those were, you know, I put a comment, but I was like, over to you, best way to solve it.
Yeah.
But as you did, you know, as you clearly did with this section here on the.
Trying.
Can I ask, are you gonna recommend following my suggestion that the nomenclature be straightened out? It requires changes throughout the document. The difference between a section and a subsection.
Yes,
Is totally unclear.
yes,
And it's a bad practice and it's wrong in certain places
yep,
where it says, this chapter, or says, what we just said applies to this section. Well, they really meant subsection.
yep.
Sometimes.
No, and that's where, when Jen and I saw that, we're like, yes, you know,
But
definitely
I'm
needs
saying,
to
but
be
that-
clarified.
That's all through the document.
Yep.
I didn't count
Yep.
in every place it came up. I counted some of them.
Well, and some of it's where you start, because like the sign regs kept referring to its 3.09, 3.09, 3.09, and it's like, so, no, it's, again, we recognize that needs to be cleaned up, so, and that was, I appreciated you really flagging it from the standpoint of section, subsection, because right now, a lot of things get referred to this chapter or this section, but it doesn't
In
go into
some-
like
in some
subsection.
chapters, some it's right.
Well, and I mean, in our current stuff, we're
By-
actively
By the way,
using.
I didn't go in a long treatise on this. Lower levels below section, you can get elaborate or unelaborate. I would suggest that there's very few references to further down below the reference of subsection number, chapter dot section dot subsection number. There's very few that beyond that. Call them all paragraphs, and whenever you say paragraph, say this paragraph 5.3.2 A.
Why would we ever need to say this section, this subsection, this paragraph? this sentence?
Attorneys write this stuff, no offense, Lee. And seriously, the sign regs are riddled with that. Yeah, no, it's, and I saw it in the telecom stuff that we were cleaning up.
There
that-
should be a hierarchy. If it's in 3.05, then 3.05.1, it would apply.
That's right. But
we
it goes
could-
the other
you could even
direction,
put
it's
in the
not
front,
always clear.
say, you know, the hierarchy is such and such that, you know, everything applies, and then you could just delete all of those. Except where you're cross-referenced to a whole.
I'll give an
different-
example. Requests for variances from the standards contained in this section shall be applied for in accordance with chapter 6. That's 3.09.13 A. Well, it says this section. Well, it really means this subsection 3.09.13. By saying section, it now needs 3.09, which picks up a whole bunch of other stuff. They didn't mean to.
Yeah, no, and
It's because there's no rigor. Any given number of places, it can go from confusing to simply wrong.
Yeah.
no, and we recognize that's part of what needs to be cleaned up, but we had to get you something
Yeah.
to, and like I said, it was helpful to have you guys flag as much as you did.
That's an example of the reason why I thought getting the next draft clean is gonna be quite a challenge, because that example I gave you is all through the document. This
You didn't
section, this
say it
section.
was like a 2-hour job, Lee. I know, we've got a lot of work to do. And we need to get this to the city attorney here at the end of this month. So, no, we recognize there's still a lot of work to do to get it spit shined. Yeah, no, there's still quite a bit to do for that detail.
You're still going to get her comments on mine, or
I'm sorry, what, Larry? Larry?
You're still going to get her comments still coming in on minor things.
Mhm.
Okay,
Yeah, no, like I said, I committed through the 21st,
Yeah,
so.
I tried to just hit heavy things.
Yeah. Oh, you guys still have another week to add in any other issues or concerns that you see. You know, and it's 239 comments on a 302-page document-ish, 308 page,
307.
337.
307.
Yeah. You know, that's less than one a page.
Okay.
I don't know if that's good or bad. Other thoughts, concerns, questions?
Well, so was I the only one who found the authorities of the Board of Appeals unclear? And also, you had like dig through 4 different sections to kind of piece it all together. And when I still piece it together in my mind, I still had a great deal of uncertainty.
That's one of that I want to go back and Lou Ramon flagged a number of things through there. Want to go back and look at it. The language is pretty specific based on what comes out of statute, what's in our current regs. There's definitely things that need to be clarified in terms of, to your point, where your application is. And I understand where, you know, it's questioning, you know, what gets appealed and or what gets varied. So I think we can tighten that up.
Variance, I didn't have a problem with all the variance, but appeals was,
It's basically anybody, whether it's at the planning staff level or if it's the city manager that's rendering the decision on a couple of things.
that's not what it currently says.
Well, it's just why I appreciate you flagging that
Yeah.
this isn't reading clear to me. Because there was a couple of things like that in the document where different folks flagged, this isn't clear to me. Which is hugely helpful so that we can go, okay, let's make this clear. So it's that rendering that decision related to applying the code, that's potentially what gets appealed, is the decision in applying the code.
And then you also, I was like, there's some places where it was very clear in the process in chapter 6 that this was not a decision, this was just a review, no decision is being made. And it's like, so there's nothing to appeal. So you can't appeal a non-decision. So that there were some places where that's not appealable because you provided a review of their draft. That's not appealable. No decision was made. They weren't harmed in any way.
They could still appeal and say, we don't like how you're applying this section. We want the Board of Adjustment to tell us, is staff applying this the way it should be?
Well, then I think you want to clarify that they shouldn't be able to appeal until a decision has been rendered.
So,
Yeah, so,
yeah,
but I mean, so that table, which, by the way, I should have stressed it more clear. I really like how chapter 6 turned out. I think the table just needs a little cleanup in terms of like what can be appealed.
mhm.
An appeal is its own process, but it applies to other processes. That was a little confusing at first, and then I put it in my head and go, okay, I got it, I'm with you. But how it came out and the structure and the clarity it provides it's phenomenal. I think it just needs a little cleanup. And like I said, the Board of Appeals, the only one that their authorities, like I said, I had to look like 3 different places to put it together. So if we could get that and then clarify, I think that would be a important, substantial update.
You keep on mentioning the Board of Appeals.
So
It's the Board of Adjustment.
see, that's-
sorry.
Okay.
I said B of A
Board
in
of
my mind.
Appeals is a different board.
Board of Building Board, I refer to it differently, which is part of Building Board, Board of Building Appeals or Board.
Okay.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
always
appeals, I just had
the
appeals
other
in my
one.
brain and that's what came out. Most people know me long enough, just hear what I really mean to say.
Related to the tables, Lee had actually asked for a small little preface to kind of introduce the table, because right now it is kind of hanging out there, so you'll see.
Table by itself, it has no effectivity unless there's a sentence that says
Yeah,
this table is such and such.
so you'll see that inserted, yeah, like I said, they weren't huge things, it's little cleanup. Some of our bigger cleanup things, but it's still more cleanup as opposed to, this didn't turn out at all like we thought. We need to scrap this and start over, that this chapter is terrible, or, there was nothing like that, thank God, because there better not be after all our time on this.
Can you remind me why, if I'm probably gonna get the names and the words wrong, but why a multiple household dwelling is a conditional use in multi-dwelling?
Because it's
So-
Woodland Park. I had a very wise man.
Is that what the?
I had a very wise man give me advice, friendly advice, which has a meaning back on the East Coast, that in my tenure as planning director, it was not advisable to look at changing that to a permitted use. No, it has to do, in my opinion, I really think it's because our standards are not as robust and clear as we would like them to be to adequately address multifamily housing and what does it look like in our community. So therefore, we rely on the conditional use permit process. So those applications are always subject to public hearing in front of planning commission and
Okay.
city council to get that level of scrutiny.
I
it
vaguely
makes me-
remember there was some inconsistency, but there was a thought behind it.
It
and
makes me
That's what I wanted
crazy.
to hear.
Planning perspective that it's not, that multifamily housing requires a conditional use permit in the multifamily zone.
I know,
One of the reasons for this is the point brought up by Karen at the very beginning of the meeting, is because it's poorly drafted description of what the district is for. It has the softest language imaginable. It's intended to accommodate attached dwellings. It doesn't say it's for attached dwellings only. But
Well, and
instead, the fix was put in was to put a C on the table. And they
Okay.
didn't, they didn't fix the language itself, which would have been
and the standards associated with it. And the other thing that's crazy from the standpoint of let's have our zoning really not mean anything is the fact that historically it was a conditional use permit to put a single family home in some of the commercial zone districts. Well, there's a lot of pressure for single family homes in Woodland Park. The comp plan keeps talking about housing options, variety. And I forget what year, I'd have to look at, it might have been 2016. When that was fixed. So now that's why it's permitted conditionally, which means you have to go through this little process. It's basically a permitted use, but you do notice to neighbors that, hey, we're going to put a single family home on this commercially zoned lot. Do you have any concerns? So we made it easier to do that, completely eroding the intent of those commercial zones. And now, because of the short-term rental ordinance, that if you want to do a non-primary residence short-term rental, where I have a house that I can rent out as a commercial enterprise, and I don't have to live there when my guests are there, you need to have a commercial zone district for that. So that increases demand for a house in the commercial zone even more. It's a commercial zone. What should go in a commercial zone?
Is that an easy answer, like a commercial building?
You don't have to answer that. I mean, it's just. It's just one of those things that it's like, what? But I'm and it's where the pressure from the development community has been, the desires. People talk about the free market and what is the market demanding? Well, the market wants STRs everywhere, but we don't have that in place. And the market otherwise wants housing just about everywhere up here. So that's where we are. And then the other thing that factors into multifamily housing, truly attached units that's been challenging in Colorado is at the state level, it has to do with the construction defects laws and liability around all that. That's really, for a lot of builders, made that a not desirable product to build, that they don't want to deal with that side of things. So from their perspective and what they're building, they'd much rather do 1 and 2 family houses or structures. Thank you for listening to my tirade about zoning.
So, well,
Jen's not arguing with me.
you can blame me, I started it.
No, it's a good question. It's a good double check.
And I know, like a year ago, this came up, we were discussing it, but I couldn't remember what the answer was.
Well, and even more recently than that, it was the second meeting in February where we did a work session where we were revising the terminology around these residential uses and the definitions and trying to clean that up some, because right now the current descriptors and such are not helpful. And I was bold and had the audacity to suggest that a duplex is a permitted use in the multifamily zone districts. This group shot that down.
Sorry, which is permitted?
A duplex in a multifamily zone. Nope, it requires that conditional use permit. So there you go.
There's a
The
logic
duplex.
behind it, that's all I was asking for. It's a kind of a weird logic, but makes sense in its odd way.
So it, not rocking the boat.
Yeah.
Not rocking that boat. But like I said, that goes back to that other project after the 2030 comp plan update, to look at housing more holistically. What does this really need to look like? What are the standards? Tightening up the intent of the zoning districts. That's a much bigger, broader kind of initiative, that I think the community would potentially benefit from.
Are we done?
I don't have anything else unless you guys, Jen, do you have anything? I didn't give you much chance to talk. I kind of just kept running with it.
And
That
Ken,
is totally fine. They've heard me plenty throughout this process.
Ken, any,
I'm fine. I will comment that there were some parts of the text of the document that I still think are unclear, that were just copied over from the old one. I did not make comments on things like that in this review. I just kind of went for anything structurally that makes the document still have errors that I could find real quick. So at some point, there's still some input that I'd like to make on a couple of sections that just, the grouping of the purpose items is kind of awkward and things like that in the first section 1 or whatever. There's just a couple things like that I don't know when or if we're going to clean those up.
That would be
But,
now, Ken. That would be now. You've got
Yeah.
7 days. And it would be very, very helpful and it can be a short little bubble that just says unclear,
Yeah,
and
okay.
Jen and I will reference it based on this conversation and this meeting. So just
Yeah, okay.
writing those would be a huge, huge help, because now is the time to get that clarity in place.
Exactly.
All right. I assume we can go ahead and put a couple of those in there then if we want. Okay. And then, the way I look at this is, the planning commission is to look at reviews of certain zoning requests and helping with the comprehensive plan and looking at the zoning changes or changes to zoning rules and zoning stuff. So I think we're the right group to be involved in some of this, but at the end of the day, I consider this the planning director's product to provide to the city council. And, I appreciate the opportunity to weigh in on it, but I'm pretty comfortable letting Karen and Jen get this through legal review and presenting it to the city council. Because I do feel like it's going to have to be a living document. I look at what we had, where we're going, and I don't think we heard it at all. Everything we've done, I think, has moved it forward. Have we moved it forward far enough? I think as long as we just keep moving it, we're getting it there. So I have no issues with continuing to push it forward on the schedule that Karen's trying to meet and getting this to the right places and get the reviews done. So, and Karen, good job trying to get all this done. And gathering input from a bunch of volunteers. That's always fun.
No, you guys are awesome, because I know the time, I mean, well, I've been here with you all. The time commitment involved has been tremendous. And Lee, you were gonna say something else there? When
No, I was just gonna follow up on the first of Ken's comments. If the fact that something's confusing in the current ordinance doesn't mean it shouldn't be pointed out, because when we have a new draft that's then put out to the public, if it doesn't make sense, it's a pretty lame explanation. Well, it's never made sense, so we just didn't bother to do it, or we don't know what it means still.
Yeah.
I mean, if it needs clarification, it needs clarification. And we may miss some, but if we see it, Ken, please help us.
Yeah, no,
No,
definitely.
yeah, understood.
Yeah. And that's
Yeah.
where you guys are awesome and wonderful for spending the time to flag that. Because it's just, I'm Jen and I are trained as planners, and we think like that. And when you get close to a project, sometimes your vision gets a little fuzzy. Or myopic, and so it's helpful to have somebody else come in and look at it with a broader or a different perspective, and or just a fresh perspective, and go, okay, no, this isn't making sense. And it's like, okay, well, we'll figure out how to explain it, or get that clarity that would help you and everybody else kind of follow what's supposed to be happening.
So we spent a lot of time looking at substantial issues up to this point.
Mhm.
And then we're going to look at minor things, little tweaks, like Lee was pointing out, some of the things on citations. What's the next step after you get that information from us?
After you guys get done making your comments this next week, and Jen and I are gonna start on this before that, but integrating, clarifying, taking care of everything that you guys are commenting on through this review period. And so getting that, that next layer, that ideally what we would consider the proposed code through to Nina, to the city attorney, for legal review. So that she can take a look at it. Is there anything that's legally a problem? I suspect something potentially still needs to be tweaked in the world of ADUs, thanks to state law changes. But I want to make sure that we double check with her in terms of where that needs to go. And there may be some other state law kind of things that impact. And when you look at when the larger code updates or changes were done, there was a number of them in the 90s, and then there's a bunch of little things that had happened over since then. There's a lot of law that's happened during that time period, so it is time for a legal scrub, looking at it. After we get that back from her, if there's anything substantive in there, we'll be visiting with you guys at that point. But we really are needing to get that legal reviewed copy out to the public as a whole. So we need to do that larger community meeting for the grand unveiling and opening that public comment period.
Are you looking at our first meeting in August as maybe an opportunity for us to say, let's go public?
Well, no, Nina gets it in August, so
Okay.
I'm into the fall before I'm doing a public meeting, probably.
Okay.
I'm estimating hopefully September, whether it's the first or second meeting in September or another date in September, to do that community unveiling. And I do feel we need to give the community a good 30 days to review and comment. It's a big document.
So you're thinking maybe middle of November for the city council to finally get it?
Well, then we gotta get through public hearings with you guys.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
So there's a hearing, so I'm December, maybe January before it's at a hearing in front of city council. And that's moving it along.
Don't plan on the second half of November or December.
Yeah, no, I know, that's, yeah,
No, that's when you give it to the public.
no, we gotta
I-
do this openly and fairly and honestly.
So I worked government acquisition for decades, and we always say we're never gonna do it, and then every time it's like, we give the contractors over between Thanksgiving and New Year's to build their proposals. It happens every time, I swear.
Yeah, no,
We always say we're never gonna do it again, and then we do it again. Yeah, so,
we want something the
Said-
community can
but-
trust.
but, you know, Lee, do your, I guess you're going around concerns. I mean, I flagged, I had three issues. The two of them were really related was the Board of Adjustments, clear authorities, and that is also reflected in the process table, so those have to jive. So that's, two of mine are really very tightly related. And then the other one, on how penalties are determined and applied, we could talk about that offline. I'm okay with that.
Oh, yeah, the whole enforcement process.
Yeah.
Nothing is set up as maybe signs may be the exception, but for the most part, things are not a ticketable offense. I don't have the ability to go write somebody a ticket for, you know, I don't know, a car in their yard that.
As I read this, you can throw me in jail, but
No,
I
it's
don't
it's a
follow the rules.
whole other process where we issue notices of violation. People have the opportunity to correct said violation. That's very key.
Right.
And if they correct the violation, life goes on, everything's good. It's when they choose not to do that, that things get more complex. And we're asking the police department to help issue a summons into court so they can explain to the judge why they can't clean the junk up in their yard, or why they've disregarded CDPs for, you know, construction, or, you know, whatever it may be. Yeah, it's
And I
it's
didn't go
more
look
the
for that
mechanism
process
to
is
get.
probably somewhere else in the municipal code. But maybe that needs to be more clearly referenced and delineated. Cause right now it sounds like you can just determine to throw someone in jail.
No,
That's how it sounds.
In some places, there's a dollar amount.
Yeah,
specified,
or
$5.
Yeah, I saw that. I'm going $5 for that?
I hope I commented on the $5 item.
yeah.
it's more about how do we get it in front of the judge to render penalties, so.
I figured it had to make sense somehow, but as you just read this stat chapter by itself, it doesn't come across that way. So, I mean, with those, so you're aware and addressing
Yeah.
those, so, you know, moving forward, I'm like, you know, 2 thumbs way up. Do you guys feel like we're at that point?
I hope so.
Well, no, you need to have an opinion on this.
We're a lot closer than we were 6 months ago.
Way closer than 2.5 years ago.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a lot of work. It's
So,
a lot of work.
personally, I'm reluctant to read through it again for all those little detailed things until you all have said, hey, we think we got 90% of them. Because I don't want to be commenting a bunch of stuff that you were going to catch anyway, and then I feel like it needs to be reviewed. So
Right.
it seems like going through for detailed comments doesn't make sense until you and Jen say, hey, we think we're at that point.
Yep.
Karen indicated that she'll get to us a spreadsheet with the comments and the resolution of them.
Yeah, Jen and I have not talked about that. You caught me on the fly before the meeting. And we'll figure out how to get you what you need.
So all I'm saying is just let us know when you think that threshold has been crossed, where it's like, you know, I think we pretty much caught all the cleanup we thought we intended to do.
When we do that, that's when it goes to the attorney. And then it comes back from the attorney with any.
We're gonna hear from,
I don't know what the
we
attorney.
don't see it again until September.
Well, but we have another week to make comments, and I'm gonna say, if the document's not gonna change, I don't know that I'm gonna make any more comments.
You know, because to limit the versions that are being reviewed and
Yeah,
what's
yeah.
being looked at, that's part of the reason I had somebody, I think it was Lee, clamoring for an early release copy. I'm like, no. It's so that everybody's looking at the same thing. It helps us in terms of what we're looking at, what gets integrated, what gets adjusted. Any of you guys who have written code or software, you got to be careful what line of code you're adjusting because of the ancillary impacts. And if you're looking at multiple versions of the same thing, it gets really convoluted quickly. So no, this is the version right now, this clean copy. And then, like I said, we integrate
what you guys have provided for feedback, and that's the version that goes to Nina for that review.
Well, like we talked about, you know, like references to different from one paragraph to another. I can't review them if y'all haven't gone through it. It's a waste of time to even look at it.
Well, and we recognize that they're still moving too, so
Yeah.
that's a lot of the reason that still needs to be scrubbed and clarified, so.
Yeah,
It's hard to bring this home, so
yeah.
the real question is the meat that's in there meeting your needs? You know, and then we'll make sure that the sections, because right now, if we're still moving stuff around, that was part of the reason we didn't spend too terribly much time in terms of some of those things, is we knew things were moving or potentially wiggling a little bit. So how many times do you want to do the same level of work?
Yeah.
Change it once.
Only once per significant update.
So, yeah, no, we were.
Yeah,
It's coming, you know, and
yeah.
it's
All right.
coming.
Okay.
So
Well, I,
ideally, the version that goes out to the community is pretty well cooked.
yeah.
You know, that's the goal, is in terms of what goes to the community, is those
Yeah.
cost references are there and solid. That's when that really needs to hit the road.
I heard our chairman use the word, we don't want to be embarrassed.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
when we go ready for the public, we want this to be our code and our recommendation.
Yeah, so,
And with, oh, sorry.
well, just to kind of repeat what I said earlier, but just to kind of close out that discussion. So I've reviewed this copy. If I had something to say, I said it. So unless this copy is going to be completely, you know, gone through and all those little edits and motions made, I don't feel there's a purpose for me to go re-review this copy again.
And that's fine.
Okay.
But like I said, I promised you 3 weeks. So depending upon what you were looking at or how you read it, the bottom line is there's still another 7 days. If something comes to mind that, oh, I want to, based on you know, after tonight's conversation, something may pop in your head, Don, and go, oh, no, I want to add a comment just generally.
Yeah, okay,
So you've still got that window.
okay.
It's
I was just under the impression we were gonna do the detailed fine comments in the next week, and so, but I can't do the detailed fine comments till the detailed fine scrub has been completed, so, all right,
Yeah.
okay. Thanks, Lee. I'm good.
Session adjourned.
I guess.
8:05.
Back that.